Okay, so welcome to the interview. Thanks a lot for talking to me today.
Thanks for coming in.
Yeah, absolutely. So we all know why you're here. You've been involved in the scene for multiple years, almost 2 decades. I want to start off with just kind of a little bit of background on you. So could you kind of describe growing up in Windsor and what was your first introduction to our metal scene?
I grew up, born in the 70s, came up during the 80s, I guess. And when I was coming out of college, the grunge era had taken over, and there wasn't much punk and hardcore, which I really grew up on. Like, that was good at the time. So I got into that for a few years, you know, just those kinds of bands. And you go see whoever you could. So that was that era, and that's when I decided to be in my first band, Spit Funnel, really, and it was more of a hardcore punk band.
How old were you during this time?
92, 93, so 21, 22. So I was at a concert one day with my buddy, and I think it was a Rancid show, and I was just singing along to everything. He's like, "We got this band together, why don't you come try out?" I'm like, "I don't know anything about singing." He's like, "You're screaming along to everything, just try it." So, bang, we wrote like 3 or 4 songs first practice, I think, and we were playing shows within a month or two. And we played all around the county, and we'd go to like London, Toronto sometimes. So we would play with anybody. Back then the scene was very varied too. We played indie bands, punk bands, hardcore bands, metal bands. So started meeting a lot of different people and contacts. So one day I was at the Coach and Horses, and my boss said, "Why don't you come here and help out, because you seem to know everybody in certain scenes." So that's kind of how we started into the booking and into that phase.
How did you get into booking?
Just was asked. You seem to know people, you want to book some shows here. Okay. And then within a week I was working the door. A month later, "Hey, why don't you try out doing sound?" And then bartending followed. So it all kind of just got thrown in my lap, and here, go with it.
Could you talk about the Coach? I know it's a pretty prominent venue. A lot of people remember it from when it was around still. So could you kind of describe the atmosphere? What were the crowds like in Coach?
Well, that building, there was the Coach and Horses downstairs, main floor, which was at Pogo's Lounge, and it used to be the old fish market restaurant. And the year that I got asked to work there, they decided to open the top floor, which was a furniture store and other places years past, into a venue which would hold about 450 people. So my boss got really busy with that, and he used to book both up and down. So he said, "Why don't you try, booking downstairs?" With a couple other guys too that did it. But yeah, so he said, "Go for it." I would just reach, because that was early internet days, or phoning people even from out of town. Or this guy said, "Well, we wanted to bring this band from out of town, so we'll call them." So a local band, and so it was still word of mouth. It was a lot more work.
Because things were getting done differently. You couldn't just like send a Facebook message back then, right? So what was it like putting these shows together? Was it a lot of work to do it?
Surprisingly, a lot of them just happened. Just basically, like I said, I would just do the local bands.
Did people come to you, or did you reach out to bands more often?
More me. Yeah, at first. Yeah, me definitely. Because my band would play 2-3 times a week for a couple of years. So it'd be like, "Oh yeah, what was that band we played with in the county? Let's give them a call." And I would have somebody who would know their number or something. So a lot of phone calls. Yeah, like during the day, that's what we'd be doing. Trying to get a hold of people. So yeah, that was how I did it then. But surprisingly, people were pretty eager to play, and I wouldn't have a hard time filling the slots.
Do you think like Windsor has something attractive about it when it comes to
that
heavy metal and punk?
That was really cool at the time because we would all play together, and then, there'd be these festivals in the summertime, and they'd be having a punk band play with like a funk band, and there was competition, but it was more like a friendly thing. And we'd all hang out and go like play, road hockey together, like people from different bands. They were like, oh, I don't usually listen to that, but you guys are cool. And so there was a good camaraderie, which always felt like Windsor's had, and it was a very exciting time, and it's still like that today. People kind of check out each other's bands, I think.
What changed over years? Like, because the 90s and then like the mid 2000s are completely two different times, right?
Right.
Do you think like the crowds changed a little bit, or were there like shifts in the type of bands that were playing?
Definitely, I think the sound of music, like I said, the grunge era, but I think towards the late 90s, some metal was having a comeback, so more metal bands were out there, which was an exciting time. And then stoner rock was huge in the late 90s too. And that's about when I started Funnel Fest in 99, I believe, and it was a bunch of stoner bands from the States were coming through to play a fest in Toronto, and they didn't have the Friday book, and they're like, well, I'm going to try to do it in Windsor. And that was the first time, I believe in 99, I booked 9 bands in one night in the coach was a small little basement bar that only held 120 people. And we got 9 bands to play in one night. It was insane. A lot of like shared gear and whatnot, but it went off without a hitch. And then the show went to Toronto and Montreal, and I believe the Windsor show, even though it was booked last minute, was the best turnout. Yeah, I just started it like that year. I booked this show, and it was like, well, my friend in 50 Watt Head at the time says, why don't you call it Funnel Fest? It was around my birthday, so I was like, okay, cool. So then every year around my birthday, I'm just getting my favorite bands like from the area and like just have a bash, and everybody have a great time. And it became a tradition. And I've only not done it 2 years now, so I guess that's 99. This year we did it, so that was 20 years. So.
Wow.
I think so. I missed 2, so there's been 18 of them. So that's why I kind of did it. It was more like call it this. So it's not about me. It's about get together with people you haven't seen in a while, have a great time, bring in new people, the new bands too. So you throw a couple of younger bands on with the older dudes, and then people get to check out each other's bands, which I've always liked. Various like bills that weren't necessarily all one genre. You can check out other bands, and then those people can make contacts and play together. So I always like that.
Well, in a way, you are kind of bridging gaps between genres. Like you wouldn't normally maybe have punk band open for a death metal band or
right.
something like that, right? But it seems like you're kind of creating this atmosphere where that can actually happen.
Yeah, because I think in those formative days of like late 80s into the early 90s, there was all those different bands that I was listening to. So people were kind of like open-minded that way, A lot of my buddies would listen to Faith No More. They loved Mr. Bungo, Faith No More. And then they also loved I Hate God and like Slayer and early death metal, Obituary and that stuff, Death.
Because there's a stereotype with metalheads how I'm a death metalhead, I'm a black metalhead, whatever, and like they kind of stick to their genres more or less.
I think we were more like punk hardcore kids that like metal. But then here, I think everyone pretty much did get along. From the beginning. I know there was the few years just before, probably late 80s or whatever, when that stuff really clashed. That's when they started going to each other's shows. Something like Obituary would play with Agnostic Front, and there'd be like the skinheads and the metalheads, and there's like there's problems at times, but I think by the early 90s, people were a little more open-minded about it.
And eventually that booking, bartending, and sound kind of came to a halt because you had a specific incident in 2010 where you were, actually, could you just describe it? Like, what happened? It
was early morning. A friend and I were up all night and decided to go for breakfast early that morning, and we were by 3 guys. 2 guys got me to the ground and were kicking and hitting me in the head. It all happened like within a minute. Bystanders in cars kind of broke it up, and I have no memory of it, but I ended up with a severe head trauma, and yeah, that kind of derailed me for a while. Hospital for a few weeks, but then recovery. Like I didn't come back to work for at least 5 months, and then that was in a limited capacity even for a couple of years after that, maybe 1 or 2 days a week. Yeah.
And due to that, currently you're not working, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I've had issues since. Yeah.
Yeah.
That morning before I had to go into surgery, I remember my boss came and I opened my eyes and there was a bunch of people there. I don't know, like 5 or 6 people there before they brought me in, and I said to my boss, "I'm sorry I can't come to work tonight." And I don't know, it's been a place I'd been at every day, 5-6 days a week for 14 years at that point, so I didn't want to miss it. And still, so I had some bookings that kept on for those months that I wasn't there, and I would still do some of it. I had a coworker who took over, but I still had some say, in okaying stuff, so it never stopped, really. Now, soon after that, about 2 weeks later, they put together a benefit for me, which they called Funnel Fest, but it's actually Funnel Fest 2.0. And a lot of people thought that that was the first one, so when I've done them since, thinking, oh, it's a benefit for you again, which is not the case. There's only the one, which amazingly, and still, it was the most amazing thing that ever happened for me, and I still appreciate it. Like when 36 bands of different genres all came together and played for 3 days on like 2 weeks' notice. I mean, that's still heartfelt, and that made me feel good about what I did for a lot of years, and it still makes me think, the scene's this incredible thing.
How did it go from you being a presence there and making it happen to just dwindling away?
Well, I want to say around the time when my thing happened, there were some bigger shows happening around the Chubby Pickle. Across the street from the Chubby Pickle was a bigger venue as well, and some bigger shows. I mean, like Hatebreed came in, Napalm Death, High on Fire. And a lot of those shows happened around the time of my incident. So I came back and was doing the smaller shows and that, but some other guys had taken over, and it was cool. It was time for them to shine and do their thing. And but yeah, I continued to do it for the next few years. There was less turnout. I was seeing less crowds come out. I think it was indicative of the time all around here, and some venues closed because of it. We ran into some troubles at our place, and we were taken over by someone else. And it was just time for me to leave there at that point.
Coach isn't around anymore. There's no shows going on there.
I continued about another year, 2014, 2015. After I left, Tyson took over, did a great job.
But currently in the present, there's a lot of really good bands coming out in Windsor. Like Viridius, great example. Genres are being created that didn't really exist so much here in Windsor. There's more death metal coming in, which is cool, and good punk bands, Psychic Void.
Awesome band.
Miners, right? Yeah, stuff like that.
Really quality stuff right now.
Tyson did mention that there's a lot of older dudes playing in 5-10 bands, right? Do you think that's true, or do you think that young people are stepping up more and trying to get music going? I
mean, I'm not as wild obviously right now, but through Facebook I do watch what's going on, and I'm always checking out and trying to share bands that I like, and it's exciting. I always check out who's in that band, because it usually is kind of funny. You're like, wow, all right, there's at least 1 or 2 dudes I know from something else, like even Viridius, the singer Tim. Yeah, I've known him for years. He's been in a few things, and he brought Cryptopsy here a few times.
Yeah, he mentioned that.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is, so there's still some older dudes, still younger than me, but older, I guess, in their 30s, still out there doing it. Yeah, there's a few that are in a couple bands, but it just seems that they don't last as long. I'm seeing.
I'm just seeing this weird paradox where there's like this really passionate community,
Yeah.
but then there's like venues opening and closing, and then another one opens and it closes, and it's just like, to me it seems almost like a cycle, right? And you have like places like the DH that have been around for years and years.
They were always doing like the more extreme stuff. Yeah. I think.
Is that a more recent
I want to
thing?
say, yeah, after the coach.
Because I'm just wondering, why does that happen? You know, why are these venues only able to stay afloat for so long? You know, like why can't Windsor have its like standard heavy metal venue where people, or punk venue, or
Right.
just in general, right, where people go and like they know that that's been there for years and it's staying there, you know, because people are supporting it. Like, why do these venues?
I think it's sustainability. I think, yeah. The bottom line, the owner's got to make money, so yeah. And some shows do great, some don't. So it's the averages, right? So yeah.
Why do you think
people
that
gotta come out? Yeah. Whatever it is, and people love the bands that are here, and they're, like you said, very passionate. So it's just about keeping people's sustainability and people coming out and spending money, and yeah.
It seems to be the common theme. Come out to shows.
Well, I've been reading things a couple times now of Toronto venues, how many have closed in the last 20 years. And I've known some of those names I didn't even know were under again. And really reading about it, and in Montreal it's happening too. So it's happening in a lot of cities, as well as London, which I was a big part of. The great venues that were around for 20 years there are gone now. I mean, Call the Office is still around, but it's one of the last ones too. So it's happening in a lot of scenes that I've seen, that I personally know. So it seems to be a trend happening in a lot of places.
Just to kind of wrap this up, where do you see Windsor scene progressing maybe in the next 5 or 10 years? Do you think that there's going to be more bands coming in? Do you think the younger generation's going to rise up and kind of take over the reins, or do you think it's going to kind of stay the same as it is now?
People are always wanting to play, but whether they'll sustain within themselves and keep playing again too, I don't really know, but I'd love to see it come back. Like I said, I've seen so much cyclical stuff over the years where it comes and goes. I think we're in a good period right now. Not amazing, but it's good. So we'll see where it goes from there.
I think it's an upwards trend though. It can only get better from here.
I just know that the few shows I've been to in the last year or so, a good show, there's a fair amount of people. Venues are half full, let's say, whichever venue I've been to, and people are having a great time and buying some drinks, so which keeps the bars going. And the cover pays the band, so, and as gas gets more, it's harder to bring and shows get more expensive as well. So hopefully people just take that in consideration and you realize that if you want to keep seeing really good bands, that you got to go out. So let's hope it continues. I love for it too. Yeah.
Hopefully. Okay. Well, I think that's a wrap.
Cool.